hand it over here to Esther. She's going to be reading Sue's Darash today.
So this was Sue's week to bring the Darash, but she was not able to be here this morning, so I'm standing in for Sue. I'm going to read her Darash for you, okay? Our Sukkot Torah reading today comes from Leviticus 22:26 through 23:44, which is part of Parsha 31, Emor, meaning speak, and also from Numbers 29:12 through 16. In Leviticus 23:33 through 43, we read, Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, in the 7th month, on the first of the month, is to be for you a day of complete rest, for remembering, a holy convocation announced with blasts on the shofar. Do not do any kind of ordinary work, and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. Adonai said to Moshe, the 10th day of this 7th month is Yom Kippur. You are to have a holy convocation, you are to deny yourselves, and you are to bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. You are to not do any kind of work on that day because it is Yom Kippur, to make atonement for you before Adonai your God. Anyone who does not deny himself on that day is to be cut off from his people, and anyone who does any kind of work on that day, I will destroy him from among his people. You are not to do any kind of work. It is a permanent regulation throughout all your generations, no matter where you live. It will be for you a Shabbat of complete rest. You are to deny yourselves. You are to rest on your Shabbat from evening the 9th day of the month until the following evening. Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, on the 15th day of the 7th month is the feast of Sukkot for 7 days to Adonai. On the first day there is to be a holy convocation. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. For 7 days you are to bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. On the 8th day you are to have a holy convocation and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. It is a day of public assembly. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. These are the designated times of Adonai that you are to proclaim as holy convocations and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai, a burnt offering, a grain offering, a sacrifice, and drink offerings, each on its own day. Besides the Shabbats of Adonai, your gifts, all your vows, and all your voluntary offerings that you give to Adonai. But on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered the produce of the land, you are to observe the festival of Adonai 7 days. The first day is to be a complete rest, and the 8th day is to be a complete rest. We're on the first day now. On the first day you are to take choice fruit, palm fronds, thick branches, and river willows, and celebrate in the presence of Adonai your God for 7 days. You are to observe it as a feast to Adonai 7 days in the year. It is a permanent regulation, generation after generation. Keep it in the 7th month. You are to live in Sukkot for 7 days. Every citizen of Israel is to live in a sukkah, so that generation after generation you will know that I made the people of Israel live in Sukkot when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Adonai your God. Thus Moshe announced to the people of Israel the designated times of Adonai. Today I would like to talk about shelters and Sukkot in my own life. This first day of Sukkot, October 3rd, is when my son Alex left for Los Angeles 5 years ago to harvest his dream career there and start a new life, not really knowing anybody there. Does that sound a little bit like what the children of Israel did, leaving Egypt and heading for the Promised Land? He recently sent me pictures of how he decorated his bedroom with wall hangings of vines and other things to make a cozy nest for being cooped up in these times. It has become his shelter. Just like my place has become my shelter, complete with many plants, including palms. Doesn't that sound sukkah-like? Alex and I each shared pictures of our cozy shelters with each other. It was an exchange that made me feel so good, somehow connected to my life. Our homes are not the only place we find Sukkot. Alex led us to Tikvat Israel because he desired a bar mitzvah. He happened to be born on Yom Kippur, so his message was in October, Genesis 1. We then enjoyed many years under the sukkah at Tikvat, the center of Richmond geographically, continuing the tradition of my Orthodox grandpa Abraham from Poland, who would build one behind our apartment building, where my aunt, uncle, and cousins also lived, in the Bronx. Then my friend Karen called me and told me about Garrett and Beit Zayit while I was on the train bound for LA to see Alex last June. So, among all the other wonderful things, I got to continue this tradition under the sukkah on the Snyder's property. Wanting a nest and shelter may be a natural impulse, stemming from the people of Israel being made to live in one by Adonai after being brought out of Egypt in slavery. This is another way to play out our thankfulness year after year and not forget. We can remember that God is our ultimate shelter. Regardless of our age, we all like to build shelters. Several years ago, around the time of the spring feasts, my daughter Julia made a tiny house with branches and foliage from our yard. I told her it looked just like a sukkah in miniature, which surprised her. Lately, I've been seeing sukkahs and shelters everywhere. After a handyman finally was hired to do some much-needed work to sell my property, I was so elated at this progress on my long, difficult journey. That night, I dreamed that the very colorful wall hanging in a frame from Singapore that someone gave me was turned into a three-dimensional model of an ornate building with a pagoda roof, like my New York childhood house on a lake. My family went back and camped out there, just like I have been going and staying at my house that I was selling. Both houses didn't sell for a long time. A few days later, a character in my book also made small models of houses. Messianic temples themselves seem like three-dimensional shelters to me, as does Stanton itself and the valley. They also make very enriching shelters. Shabbat Shalom.
All right, Shabbat Shalom. All right, well, thank you, Sue, for sharing that with us.